Well, hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Best Fleets to Drive For podcast. I'm Mark Morrell, co-founder of Carrier's Edge and co-creator of the Best Fleets to Drive For program. And I am joined today by Continental Express, Kiera Sullivan and Brad Gottemoeller from Continental Express. And I believe I got both of those names correct. Am I right?
You are correct.
All right. Welcome, Kiera and Brad. So thanks for taking some time to talk to me today. Before we get into too many of the hard questions, give me the quick sort of 1-minute overview for our listeners of Continental Express, where you're located, what you do, and how many drivers you guys have.
Sure, I'll take that. So we're Continental Express. We are based out of Sydney, Ohio. So we're headquartered in Sydney, Ohio. We haul primarily refrigerated food product. So we work with a lot of Fortune 500 customers, and so we haul primarily refrigerated food. We have 9 different locations across the country. And we have approximately 470 trucks, 530 drivers. Okay,
excellent. One of those rare companies that's in the Eastern time zone with me. Yes, it gets so used to everybody being in Central time. So it's nice to have a fellow Eastern time zone person. This is your first year on the Best Fleets Top 20, but I know that you have had some exposure to the program before. So tell us a little bit about what the experiences was like for you going through the questionnaire, the interview process. How was that for you this year?
Well, I would say, we started out, we got a nomination from a driver, and that was sort of the first step in the process. So we were super excited about that. And then that led to the questionnaire process. And, overall, it was good. It was not easy. And the reason I say that is because there's just a lot of information that has to be gathered. But I guess for such a prestigious, great award, you wouldn't want it to be easy. So it was a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of data, a lot of policies, a lot of information that had to be gathered. So it required a group effort, a lot of work amongst our leadership team. But it was worthwhile. We felt like we had a lot of really good things to share. So we were excited to do that and to do our best, to do it well. But it definitely was not, a real simple, quick process, but I wouldn't want it to be that way because I think that if it was, then I don't think, you truly find out who the best fleets are. And then from there, we went into an interview process and that was great. We brought numerous people in from our leadership team. Bradley and I were both on the call, and that was super easy. I think, it was just a conversation kind of like we're having today. And then we went into the driver survey process, and basically we had to not only get just a handful of drivers, but a large percentage of our drivers to complete the survey. Which at first it seemed like a lot, but once we dove into it, we realized, hey, we can do this. And so we did. And so overall, a great process, but not easy, very worthwhile. And we're super excited to be part of the top 20.
Yeah. And to add to that, I guess a little bit, we're surprised. I guess we had a great percentage of drivers who turned out to fill out the survey. Like I kind of mentioned, I think it was like 105, 110 drivers we had to get to fill out it. And we were surprised that we sent it out, and they all were very gracious to participate and leave great reviews about our company and be able to get on here. And I think, we've had our eyes on this award for the last, 5-10 years. I think we've been really kind of like eyeing it and looking at it and comparing ourselves to other best fleets to drive for, and kind of trying to mold our company into being a best fleet. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first year we've actually really filled it out and submitted the whole process, because this is the first year that we have felt like we were a best fleet to drive for, because, years past, we still were missing a few things here or there. And we just really wanted to, do it right. And kind of, you guys have a great platform to mold yourself being a great company.
That's an interesting comment. As one of the things that stuck out for me looking through your results is that it was very surprising to see somebody who's a first timer make it into the top 20. That's very uncommon. Usually it is a few years going through the process of sort of going through the questionnaire and then thinking about the responses and then sort of getting better each year and expanding on that. Usually people will be a finalist maybe the first year, then they might get a fleet to watch, and it can quite often be 3 to 5 years before they make it to the top 20. So it really was surprising to me when we put all the numbers together at the end and there you were on the top 20. And I'm like, where did these guys come from? They were like a first timer. It's very uncommon for that to happen. So I was quite surprised by that. But what you're saying kind of makes sense, that you actually were going through it, you were working on it, you just were sort of doing it secretly in the shadows. So
right,
good.
Yep.
Okay.
We didn't want to submit it until we felt like we had a good shot at winning it.
Well,
and the other thing is we've learned a lot. We were nominated a couple years ago, and we looked at the questionnaire process, and I think we were like, oh my gosh, there's a lot here. There's a lot of things we're doing, but we realize there's a lot of things we probably could be doing better. So it's great to be able to, through this whole process, we've been able to really reflect upon what we're doing well and maybe what we can, upon which we can improve. But it's been a very good learning process for us. And I think it's, by being part of this, we have become a better fleet as well. So.
Right. Yeah. And tracking certain things. There's a lot of things on here that you guys require very specific numbers and data. And then I remember a few years ago, like we were doing a lot of that stuff, but we didn't really have it maybe tracked right as well. And, maybe so creating new processes to track that and get that data and run it for years and actually really kind of have those numbers to support it is another thing. So.
Excellent. Yeah, that's cool. We don't make any bones about the fact that it's a hard questionnaire to go through, and we're going to ask a lot of unpleasant questions, and we're going to make it worse every year. But once you've been through it the first time, it does get a little easier because you can keep those answers and then just update them. But yeah, it is a little bit miserable in the beginning, and I'm not really sure. Like you say, we don't want it to be too easy. If somebody went through that program and said, "Oh, it was no problem. I didn't have any issue answering that questionnaire," I'd be very worried about them. I'd be very concerned about that person who thought it was easy, but in general, it's fairly tough. One of the things that you mentioned that you were happy with is the number of your drivers that participated in the survey. And that was actually one of the things that stood out for me when I was looking through your responses is the questions that we ask you that are really about communication within the company and collecting feedback from your drivers and then acting on that feedback. You had really strong programs, and you have a way of getting your leadership involved in getting out there and getting drivers to talk. So tell me a little bit about how you do that, how you make that work as part of your schedule, how you sort of fit it into what you're doing, and how you get drivers comfortable enough to tell you what they really think rather than just sort of giving you the glossed over answers.
Right. And I can take the first jab at this, Kiera. So starting off, I think all of our leadership team, we have our phone numbers on our iPads. So in all of our trucks, we do have company issued iPads, and we have our own self-developed iPad app as well for dispatch communication. And on there, we have a contact list, and my cell phone number, our director of operations cell phone number, Russ is our owner's cell phone number. We hand those out freely to drivers to feel that like there's no gap between us and you. Like, feel like you have to jump through hoops to actually try to like talk to somebody and get an answer. So we're available 24/7 for them. And in addition, we have, retention calls we try to do every week. We send out with 5 different people. And I believe, Kiera, I saw that you actually did a retention call as well today. So we include our exec board on those retention calls to really call drivers. And we try to build a relationship with every driver that we become their friend. And, you really want to be there and care for them. And, they're great, a lot of great people. And that's the best advice we have, is just really get to know the driver. Don't be afraid to talk to them on the phone for an hour, and just doesn't have to be about work, it's be about life and how's your kids and whatnot. And yeah, sports games, it's be surprised.
Yeah, Kiera, tell us about that. So you're doing these outreach calls now too?
Yeah, so we have, and I've been doing them for quite some time, and really our entire organization is, but so we have one of our programs to reach out to drivers is, so we have, let me take a step back. We have somebody that is a retention specialist, and their job is to really communicate and work, every single day with our fleet of drivers, of course, recruiting, and we have a recruiting department, and that's important, but if you can get bodies in and you can't keep them, it doesn't really matter. So we recognize that, and we want to really have a program that allows us to get people in the door, but then keep them. We want them to build, this isn't just a job, but we want them to build a career with us. So yes, one of the things that we do within our program is we have everyone within the organization, beyond just the driver managers, reach out, and the retention specialist sort of manages the program, but they reach out to, I reached out actually to 3 different drivers between yesterday and today, and just reached out to them and said, hey, my name is, Kiera. I don't know if we've had the opportunity to speak, but, I wanted to reach out so you have another contact within the organization beyond your driver manager or beyond somebody that you may normally speak to in operations or maybe safety or HR. And, how are things going, and what can we do? And we always ask for a suggestion. What is one thing that we can do to improve upon to make your life better or easier? And then we take all that information and we share it, because you can have data and tons of information, but if you don't do anything with it, it really doesn't matter either. So we really do try to take those suggestions and look for trends, and then also implement. Sometimes they're just really easy little things that can just make the driver feel better. And, I think they appreciate, getting calls from people that are just outside of their normal contacts to say, hey, other people know who I am, they care about me. And so it's been a successful program. We've gotten some really good ideas from it. And I love talking to our drivers. I think that it's just really important. It helps us, and I think it's important for everyone in our company to know what's going out there on the front line, and that's extremely important. So we do. And the other thing I think that, I guess, from my perspective, maybe makes us a little bit unique. So we were one of the top 10 large carriers, but I wouldn't really call us a large carrier. I mean, we're definitely not a mega carrier, super size. I mean, we have, 530 drivers, 470 trucks. So we may not have all the resources as a really large carrier, but we do have a lot of resources, and we're still able to really, I think, keep that smaller feel that a lot of the smaller carriers, what makes them unique. We can still implement those policies and those practices and sort of still be, we're big enough, but we're not super large where we can make decisions pretty quickly and, get things to the right people and make changes if they're necessary. There's not a lot of bureaucracy in place, but on the flip side of it, we're still, we're big enough, but we're small enough. So there's some really good things that the small carriers can do, and also some really good things that the large carriers. And I feel like we're a good in between to be able to appeal to a lot of drivers because of that as well.
Yeah, it definitely comes through in the responses and the things that you're doing. So on these outreach calls that you're doing, how do you decide who's calling which person? Is there somebody who will do kind of a random drawing and say you're calling these people this week?
Yep. So it's not necessarily random to an extent. So we export our whole driver database into an Excel file with their just names and numbers, and then kind of their anniversary. So how long they've been here. And then, we have an internal score I created that kind of grades them of how, the newer they are, the higher score they are. So it's kind of more likely they are to potentially quit. If somebody's been here 10 years, odds are they're probably going to continue to stay here because they're established. And then we go through and we're making sure that we touch those higher score peoples, because data shows that if you can keep a driver past 90 days, that then they'll stay long term. So we really try to we reach those new hires. That retention specialist does that on her own every week, or his own every week. They're talking to those new hires that we have and seeing how they're doing. And then in addition, then we have this list that we keep out. We check off how many times we call the driver, and then we have the responses scored as well. Is it low, medium, high, priority? How risky is it? And there's associates a score as well, and then kind of grades the driver and how likely they are to potentially maybe leave or have issues. So we try to reach those higher ones, and we reach every driver we go through, but the frequency might be more for someone who is maybe on the fence versus
interesting.
Everything's doing well.
So everybody talks about having an open door policy, and they want drivers to come in and sort of share their ideas, but you go right out to them. You kind of go the other way, which is a good way to make sure that those quiet people hiding in the corners actually get reached. The ones that aren't comfortable coming in, that they're still getting contacted. And you said something earlier, Kiera, that I really think is important to follow up on, and that is this: ask for a suggestion and then do something about it, and then share that information. So it's fine to chit chat with them. It's great to talk to them and build those personal relationships. But to really have an effective program company-wide, you need to show everybody that you're doing something with that information. So the fact that you're getting a suggestion from them, or you're getting something to change, and that you're sort of publicizing how that happens, really reinforces that and has kind of a spillover effect on other people as well, that they see that you're not just talking to them for the sake of talking to them, you're actually getting their feedback and doing something with it, which ends up creating more of kind of a circle of success, where you have more people willing to talk and share their ideas when you call them, I would think. So,
yes, definitely.
Yeah, great idea. You also mentioned something earlier that I had on my list to ask you about, and that is your iPads in the truck and your app. Now, in the past probably 5 years, we've seen definitely a shift towards fleets creating their own custom mobile apps, but I don't come across very many that have iPads in the vehicle. So tell me a little bit about how that came about, why you went that direction, and what you're doing with it.
Right. So it's probably 4 years ago now. We had Qualcomms in all of our trucks prior to this, and we were nearing, a phase where we had to replace a large portion of them due to them being 3G, and that, 3G towers are going away. So it was going to be a huge cost to replace them, to put 4G Qualcomms in. They are not cheap. So at that point, we kind of took a step back. We're like, these Qualcomms haven't changed in the last, 20 years, really. And, we're buying, navigation devices for all of our trucks too, Garmin's, Rand McNally's, whatever, we're handing out to drivers as well. What if we just create our own and kind of combine the two, along with a plethora of other features that we offer in-house as well. So we did that. I reached out, I did some research on app development companies, and then about 4 years ago that started, and here we are. So we are, every truck since for about 2 years has been on iPads, I believe, company issued, and overall the feedback on it is great. It's all truck navigation. We have integrated with all the major fuel stops, so Loves, Pilots. We show them that on the map, where they can easily fuel, the fuel prices, and like I said, we have a contact list, so they never have to worry about, where can I get a hold of anybody? We have accounting, payroll, all that on there, and their driver manager, safety, they can reach out to anybody freely with their extensions, and it's really been a great success being able to do that. Great driver feedback. So we have a feedback app on there as well. So I think we mentioned that. So after every load a driver completes, there's a feedback section. They can give feedback on that shipper, receiver, how the route was, would they do it again? And we try to take that feedback and be like, all right, we're getting consistent, maybe not good feedback on this lane. Maybe we should reconsider this and maybe not do that anymore. Oh, we're getting great feedback on this one. Maybe we can try to get more of this lane because drivers seem to like this customer or whatnot. So we try to drive everything around them.
Interesting. And is your ELD on there as well?
So we're not allowed to create our own ELD because we're a trucking company, but yes, we do. So we have the ELD app on there. Currently, we are transitioning to Motive or Keep Trucking as our ELD we use on there. So we just have to toggle back and forth.
Okay, excellent. So when you were going through that program, and it sounds like it's not fully rolled out yet, but from what I can see, it looks like you involve drivers a fair bit in deciding how you're going to make that happen. So tell me a little bit about that and how you got their feedback and how you incorporated that into those plans.
Are you referencing the app as well?
The app and the iPad program and sort of all of that sort of thing.
Right. So we had I think we tested it for a year. We had a driver run the iPad and the Qualcomm kind of hand in hand, side by side. We had a few drivers for a year, and we got their feedback. And I mean, he has my number, and we talk daily on, hey, we should do this, and all this would be great. Trip planning, and trying to take some of the biggest pains that maybe we see from drivers calling in. They're always calling in about certain things. How can we give that information to them readily on the iPad, so they don't always have to feel like they're trying to call in, maybe get an answer, or waiting. We can just it's there for them all at their disposal and in easy access. And we have suggestion macros for the iPad as well. We're still constantly evolving it. We send out updates every other month, adding new features at the driver's request. So we have radar apps on there as well. Yeah.
So we're working on a version that's compatible with the iPhone as well.
Okay. So right now, all of this works on an app that is just on the iPad in the vehicle. And so it's not something they can put on their own phone or anything like that, but it's sort of, you've kind of made your own in-cab device.
Right. Yeah. So all of our trucks have a mounted in iPad, and that's secured to the dash that has this. And then, as Kiera mentioned, we're in the process of developing and making it iPhone compatible. So all of our new trucks we buy going forward will receive iPhones in the truck instead of iPads.
Right. Nice. And that kind of follows the way you seem to do a lot of your equipment speccing. I noticed that in the notes you were talking about how you get feedback from drivers on various different types of equipment. So you seem to have a program where you will incorporate the drivers a lot in those decisions and maybe getting them to test out different things. So talk a little bit about that if you can.
We definitely have a program where we work with a group of drivers, and that's not always the same group of drivers every time. Obviously, we can't have, all 550 of our drivers pilot, a piece of equipment or certain technology, but we do. We have a group of drivers. We almost always try to pilot within that group and get feedback amongst the group and amongst, other drivers. We extend it out as well. But, we just can't have a rep from, say a truck manufacturer or some sort of technology company come in and talk to a couple people, about a product without us truly piloting it within our group. We always ask whether we're looking at, cameras or our new ELD provider or the iPads or just new trucks in general. We run primarily Freightliner trucks, but we do upgrade in what we purchase. And we really do want to get the driver's feedback on that, and not just for a day. I mean, we want this for several months to make sure that we're, if we're going to pay for this product, we want to make sure that we're getting, really the best quality that we likely can. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, with that driver feedback, we've had recently some driver feedback to get a few Kenworths in our fleet. So we, like Kiera mentioned, we're primarily Freightliner. We have been for the longest time, but recently, this past year, we actually branched out and bought a few Kenworths as well, just to, based off that driver feedback, that we want to, help diversify and the fleet and, meet their needs. So.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny how these products all sound amazing when the sales rep is in your office telling you about them. But yeah, you do need to actually go through them and make sure they're going to work for you and be a successful addition to the company. So, in a little bit of a different direction, but still talking about how you evaluate and decide on what you're going to be doing. We have a fairly new question on our questionnaire this year that talks about how you decide which drivers are getting paired with which fleet managers. And you had a really good program for doing that. So the way that you decide which people are going to work together based on personality types and things like that, and then making sure that they are having success after the fact. I thought that was really interesting. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you're doing that?
Yeah, so we have a personality test that we developed. It's, front and back, 12, 15 questions, nothing too, strenuous, but we handed it out to all of our new hires and they fill it out, and it just kind of goes through what are your hobbies, what are your interests, what music do you like to listen to, what's your priorities, do you prioritize pay, home time, family, miles, what's your pet peeves, how do you like to be communicated with, kind of this questions like that. And just kind of go through, redocument them, and then we upload them online with our driver profile, and based off that information, we try to match them with a dispatcher who would, kind of meet those needs, or, whatnot, introvert, extrovert type stuff.
Nice. And how long have you been doing that?
Oh, we started that probably a little over a year and a half ago now. It was, I'm trying to think, man, time flies. So it could have even been 2 years ago.
I think I would say about 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I think, actually, yeah. Probably 2 years ago. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, it was either in the void of COVID or it was in the alternate universe before COVID. So yeah.
It all kind of blended together, and time flew.
No, that's great. So it's obviously working out well for you, and you're finding success in that, which is really good to see. Nice.
And we will.
Go ahead.
Sorry, just to add in. I mean, we will definitely, part of, the check calls that we talked about with the retention calls is one of our questions on our list, is to check in, how are things going? How's your relationship with your driver manager? We will absolutely move people around if we see that there is a problem as well, to help with, their success. So.
Yeah, well, that's the key thing that makes these things successful, is actually following up afterwards. Yeah, we did this in the beginning. We thought it was going to be a match, but did it actually work out? Is it really a match, and how's it going? So that's one of those things that sort of closes the loop and builds that trust within the team and gets them more comfortable communicating. And then you've got the feedback you need to continuously improve the program too. So that's a really good idea, really smart move. Next, I had a question sort of in a different direction, and I wanted to talk a little bit about your social events and the social activities that you do with your drivers. And you do a few different things, and I'm going to ask you to sort of go through those. But the biggest thing that jumped out at me is the high participation rate. We have all kinds of companies that do lots of different things for their drivers, and then we ask how many drivers actually attend, and it's maybe 30%, or in a good day, maybe 40% attend. But you have like 80% of your drivers that are participating in your different social events. How are you getting such high participation? What's your secret?
Well, it's definitely not easy. I would say probably the biggest secret is that we have, so we have 9 different terminals throughout the country, and most of our drivers are centered around those terminals. So we don't have a ton of drivers parking their trucks all over the country at different locations. So it's relatively easy for us to get drivers into our locations, and we're not just doing, if we do an event, for example, Driver Appreciation Week, we have a big driver appreciation event. I mean, all week we celebrate, but we do have like a safety and driver appreciation picnic, and we don't just do that at our corporate headquarters. I mean, we do it at all the different locations, and we make a conscious effort to try to get our drivers, do it at a time or extend it amongst several days where we can reach, all of our drivers. And because, it's definitely a challenge because they're gone, they're out on the road. And so we really have to try to think of ways that we can, get them to us. And I do think with our volume of our terminals and the location of our drivers, it makes it a little bit easier for us than maybe for some other providers.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the positions we have, the longest, we don't have any drivers that stay out more than 2 weeks at a time or a week at a time. Like we offer every driver's home weekly or home daily. We don't force you to stay out more than 1 week at a time. So with that being said, they're parking at the terminals, so we see every driver on a weekly basis. And then if they choose, they want to stay out a second week, they by all means can, but just because of that, we see them frequently, daily.
But you also are doing some other things that I think sort of go beyond the regular kind of appreciation week, Christmas party type stuff that you have that, but you also have some group events that are more things that are sort of catering to people's individual interests. So like the Touch a Truck events or your NASCAR contest. Mm-hmm. When you're doing things like that, it gives people something more than just sort of show up at an event. It gives them something to think about and participate in, even when they're not necessarily there at the terminal. So I think the NASCAR event is kind of an interesting one. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So we have basically, and our human resources department sort of manages this, but I know that a lot of drivers are interested in NASCAR and follow the racing. So we watch every single week, and we allow drivers to submit their pick for who, the winner of the race might be for any given week. And if they're correct, then they win a small award from us. And we kind of make a big deal about it on social media and different things. So it's a way to engage drivers. I mean, we're always looking at different things we can do. Not everything has to be, like you said, big, and we recognize that, like a huge, picnic or event, but we're really trying, all the time, we're talking about different ways that we can brainstorm to bring drivers together to make them feel, because of them being out on the road, make them feel like they're part of a group. And we want them to get to know each other. We want them to get to know, the people inside the office and their peers out on the road, because we believe that builds camaraderie. So, for example, by doing the NASCAR event, that allows us to bring drivers together, even if it is remotely. It's still something that they can look forward to. It's a way for them to get to know, and they, may see somebody then passing, at a terminal and say, "Oh, you're, Bobby Smith or whatever your name is. And I just saw, last week that you were a NASCAR winner and, cool, you have your hat on." And so it's just a good way to bring, camaraderie together. For example, right now, we just had a discussion this morning. There's a big, heat wave, I think, across the country. I know in Ohio, it's like in the mid 90s, which is hot. I talked to a driver yesterday, he was actually in one of the retention calls. He said, everything's great except for it's 96 degrees down here in Gaffney, South Carolina. So, we said, why don't we try to get, bottles of water and get them out and get them at all of our terminals and just hand them out to our drivers as a little token of appreciation, and we can communicate that. And so we're always trying to do things to bring people together.
Nice. Yeah. Well, you also are doing a lot, it looks like, through sort of social media, through different groups. So you mentioned sort of highlighting these things on social media, but I see that you've got some Facebook groups and things as well, where drivers can communicate and sort of build those relationships, even when they're not physically there in front of each other. So that seems to all be supporting that sort of building of the community in a variety of different ways, right?
Correct. Yeah, we have numerous different Facebook groups that have, that are really, I think, productive. Our overall driver group has a great number of people involved in it, and I'm part of that group too. And I see people constantly posting, hey, this is going on at this location, or did you know about this road closure, or did you know about this thing at the shipper and receiver, or what do you think about this? And it's all really just positive, trying to help each other. And gosh, this day and age, you have to, I think, have a presence, virtually and on social media, because that's just how, so many people communicate and interact.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that wraps up all of the questions that I had, all of the things that I wanted to go through. But before we close out, is there anything else that you guys wanted to highlight about what you're doing with your drivers that we didn't talk about? I know I'm putting you on the spot there, but that's okay. You can say no. That's fine.
The only thing I can think of, I think that helps us stand out as well, is kind of helping to bridge that gap between our office and drivers. Is we actually, myself, our director of operations, and both of our planners do ride-alongs once a year with drivers. Go out, do a full day's work with them. It's with a local, obviously, but do a full 10, 12, 14-hour day with them, and see what they actually go through on the road, because it's so easy to sit here in the office and say, okay, I can plan them at 50 mile an hour and kind of trip plan them, but you don't actually get to see what are some of the struggles they go through on a daily basis on the road. Is it, the fuel island at the lugs for the pilot is jam-packed and it's a 45-minute wait, or is there an accident, or is there this, or maybe there's a flat tire, stuff that just you can't plan for, and you have to really experience. And it helps our planners relate better when planning, so they can see, okay, I remember it does take extra time, and it does do that. So
yeah, it's a great point, and not enough companies do it. It's not that difficult to do periodically, but it brings a ton of benefit, because you get a lot of value out of seeing what's really happening there. So yeah, excellent point. Okay, Kiera, any last thoughts?
No, the only other thing I can think of is, I think we always just have in the back of our mind that, it starts with us to just, generally speaking, champion our industry and our drivers as a whole. That's something that we're really passionate about. I think that, it's our job through just little things that we can do to really build our industry up, because I think there's a lot of people that, maybe don't fully appreciate or want to tear down our industry to some degree. And we work really hard through our efforts, whether it's, being involved in local parades or touch a truck events, like we mentioned before, or champion, bikes for kids, and helping our drivers and supporting our drivers to do good things within the industry, because it's, we really believe it's our job to help build this industry up. It's a great industry. There are so many hardworking men and women, and it's needed. It's so vital. It's so necessary. And so, when we can be part of something like this, that's great. I think it's really good for our industry. And every single day, we're thinking about, what little things can we do to help build, our drivers up and build this entire industry up as a whole.
Yeah, the drivers are ultimately, they're the knights of the road, and, they need to help, bring that back. So
awesome. Well, I think that is an excellent place to end off. So thanks for your time, and thanks for watching, everybody.